And may I please ask Jeff, Pong, and Jake to turn on their cameras and your microphones for the fireside chat. Great. Thank you so much, guys. I will be showing you the questions, but feel free to chat away. But before we kick things off, please do a round of intros. Let's start with Jeff.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Vicky. I'm Jeff Wentworth, co-founder of Curvegrid. Very excited to be here today and talking about the Reddit Community Points Engine dashboard.
Great. And from our team, we have Jake.
Hey guys, I'm Jake. I lead the infrastructure team at OMG Network. Been with the company for around 2 years now, and I was one of the people working on this project from the OMG Network side.
Last but not the least, Pong.
Hey everyone, my name is Pong. I'm a technical product manager here at OMG Network, and I work with Jake on the Community Points Engine on this project. And DK, I got my coffee mug right here.
Great. To kick things off, we have the first question. What was the product development process that goes into building CPE from a month, from ideation, middleware assistance, etc.?
Yeah, I can take this one. There is quite a lot involved to get the product out from basically from just zero to something that people can actually use, especially in production with a on OMG Network. So to begin with, we really started with the outcome in mind. So with what we wanted to do is to just get an actual, we can submit this documentation, we can submit a proposal, but we'd rather have something that's live and usable that they can integrate with. So with that said, that leads us to actual application design, defining some of the assumptions that we have on the project, how we're going to do things. So that's when we went with the theory layer design and then the actual extension as a client so that the actual Redditors can make transactions on the network. Then after the design process, the UI, UX, we really go into shipping the product and doing, even in the middle of that, we do multiple rounds of internal testing on Robston network. And of course, last but not least, actually shipping this thing and making sure that we provide a comprehensive documentation along with the project. And the final stage, of course, is marketing, communications, really polishing everything and making sure everything is ready to go, pushing stuff into production alongside the moderator dashboard, so that we can have a full end-to-end working prototype that Reddit can actually inspect. And yeah, all of that was under 1 month.
If just to add some perspective from the Curvegrid side as well, I mean, the scale of Reddit is just amazing, right? Isn't it something like 600 million monthly active users? That's like a tenth of the population of the planet. Like the scale is just outstanding, right? And so, obviously this is a proof of concept. We got to get it done quickly. But when we went into it, we thought, well, what are the kinds of features and functionality that we want to showcase if you're going to be building this planet scale points distribution platform, right? And it's only going to get bigger. I mean, the user numbers are only growing, right? And so, you've got 600 million or whatever it is, monthly active users. You've got tens of thousands of active subreddits. You've got, hundreds of thousands of users per subreddit. And so, I think some of the features that we prioritized, at least on the supply side, were enterprise wallets, two-factor authentication, audit log, REST API, the features that, there was a question, I think, during the Dan's demo around, could a moderator use the dashboard? Absolutely. But is this really what the final integration is going to look like? I mean, yeah, there might be some manual work, but really, the minting and distribution of points is going to be hooked up to some sort of giant automated process that Reddit has working in their data centers already. And so, we wanted to be able to show like, yeah, we can not only build a dashboard to do this, but it's got all the connecting pieces in there to really, operate at scale. And so, from our side, that was a lot of the kind of the ideation that went into it when we were building this.
Yeah, and I think this, just to add on to that, the one word that you used was just priority, right? If you have a fixed time to deliver a product, then as far as like the project management, the golden triangle has defined is that you have time to choose between either the quality or the feature sets that you've decided to do. So I think it's all the matter of prioritization.
Great. Now let's jump on to the next one. What were some of the challenges that you encountered when building the OMG Reddit CPE?
Well, I guess this one follows on nicely from the first one. I mean, one of the big ones for us was the time constraints. I mean, we from the moment that we had the invitation to tender from Reddit and to the actual delivery of the not only the engineering deliverable, but the documentation that went along with it, the communication, the branding that we went, everything as well. It was, we had 4 weeks or so to do this, and that was a significant challenge. I really enjoyed working with my colleagues at the OMG Network. There's many different teams that this touched, not only engineering, but of course all the other teams. There was product, there was security, there was our marketing and communications team, designs, and it was really nice to see everybody come together, work hard, and get a quality product that we can all be proud of.
Go ahead,
Dan. Thank you, Jeff. On the dashboard side of things, something we struggled with, well, not struggled, but I guess a challenge we faced, rather, was creating basically an abstract, abstracting everything correctly. Since, we were testing locally, we were testing on Robston, and then the final distribution was happening on mainnet, right? So each environment has its own set of smart contracts. Some were deployed by us, some were deployed by other folks at the OMG network team. And the nuances of the different platforms, like for example, on Robston, on the OMG network, the fee is paid in ETH, but as we know on mainnet, on the OMG network, the payment, the fee, the transaction fee is paid in OMG tokens. So throughout development, we just had to be mindful of all these nuances of the project, and making sure basically that the correct value is available when the correct environment is in action. But thanks to the help of the OMG network, as well as the documentation, we were able to double check, triple check that everything was set up correctly and ready for the distribution on mainnet.
Pong, how did you feel about the requirements from Reddit?
From Reddit?
I think
Sorry.
that's right. From like the actual Reddit. You mean like actual Reddit team themselves, right? That make the RFP. Yeah,
from the original post that went out on the Ethereum subreddit.
Right. I think on that front, so I have a few opinions on this. So their document is very extensive, right? It's very detailed. So obviously it's they definitely know what they want with the layer 2 solutions. My gripe with it is that as a solution provider, or infrastructure provider, really, to offer something that truly solves a problem for the customers or for the clients, you really need to be collaborating, right? I understand the format is a competition, so you have this fixed timeline, you have this outcomes that you need to accomplish, but the elements that is missing is ability to talk and just back and forth and collaborate with the customers, and that's how you really know that you have a product that solves customers' problem, right? So I think the challenge is building out, although it's just 1 month, but building that out while not being able to ask questions or really interactively discussing with Reddit about what they want.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember when you and I were discussing sometime before the deadline that many of the other proposals that had come through were mostly focused on just creating transactions. Now, to us, what does that really mean? I mean, what does that really mean to Reddit? You know, there's always intention behind a transaction. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to demonstrate as part of this deliverable that we had the capability that we set out to fulfill from the original requirements. So we made it very easy to do so. Dimitri did a great job with the technical documentation, and that was included in there as well. And that was a fantastic way to kind of validate some of the original requirements.
It was interesting too how, you know, they weren't starting from zero, right? Like they've done kind of at least one, maybe two rounds of sort of testing on at least a test network. I don't know, maybe no, not mainnet, but one of the test networks with previous tokens. I think they did one like a year ago, and then there's one that's sort of ongoing right now with Fortnite and the cryptocurrency subreddit, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, you know, like the clearly the requirements came from their experiences with that. And it was interesting how they jumped, like, you know, the kind of two things. Got to be like anchored to Ethereum and has to be a layer 2 solution, because I think they knew that it just like it was not going to work otherwise. And so, yeah, I mean, when we're speaking with companies or organizations that want to get into blockchain, you often have to have like that conversation first, like which blockchain or why or what are your requirements. So it was a good fit, right? So it's a perfect fit for OMG Network. But yeah, like that, we sort of like skipped all of that. We went right to kind of the implementation piece. Yeah, the you know, and often, I mean, coming back to what you're saying, Pong, about how it typically being like this something of this scale being very collaborative, and especially for a platform like Reddit, right? It's all about like having a big discussion about it. But I think most of the teams sort of labored in quiet because of the kind of the parameters of this, and then. Yeah, I mean there were very few touch points with the Reddit team, at least from our perspective. So that was interesting as well. So we'll see. You know, I guess we'll see how it turns out going forward.
Right. And I think just not to linger on too long on this point, but like eventually you're gonna have to, you know, interact with the customers, right? Like real end users, whether that is like an actual Reddit moderators that are moderating and moderating this community, or it's a Reddit user, right? That to try out and test and making sure that things actually work. So it's a question of like this fidelity and like getting feedback from customers, which is missing from most RFPs, I think.
Well, I like what you guys have done with the Chrome extension. It's just a really slick experience, and it's sort of like, well, you know, we're not only going to show that we can do this and have the stats around the transactions per second, et cetera, but we're just going to go do it. So, I mean, that's been great to watch, like the rocks flying around, you know, in the rock garden on r/OMG Network, and people really getting into it. It's sort of like a real like proof of not just proof of concept, but like in reality, it's actually working and going on there with maybe not the customer in terms of Reddit, but the end users, the end customer, which is all of Reddit's users, which is very cool to see.
Yeah, and speaking of throwing rocks around, let's jump into the next question, which is, why does sending rocks through the community points extension not incur a transaction fee?
I feel like I'm on Jeopardy here, and I have to buzz in quickly because you see the squares on the screen and the blue background.
Dun, 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 dun.
Nice.
Who wants to take this?
I can explain just really quickly about how the feedless transaction actually works. The original, I think, goal right from the Reddit, from the requirement, is to not let user having to pay transaction fee. In the Ethereum world, this is feedless transaction, or otherwise known as meta transaction. The way that OMG Network actually handles transactions with a UTXO model actually allows us to pretty natively let user make a transaction without having to pay for fees. So right now we are accepting OMG tokens as a fee. when we achieve a feedless transaction. So we have what we call a fee relayer server that takes a user's transaction, adds a input of themselves. So the fee relayer's input to absorb the fee for the end users. So it's paying on behalf of the end users. The user, from their perspective, they don't have to really know that they need to have OMGs or any fee tokens or stuff like that. They just have to have those points available. So I'm gonna let me check on a Block Explorer, and I'll send you just a link to demonstrate how the feeless transaction actually works.
And I mean, while you're looking that up, like this is definitely like a top request of so many people that we talk to. It's very, and always a challenge on Ethereum. And we solve it obviously up with a combination of multi-sig wallets, as well as the enterprise wallets, the hardware security modules, the HSMs. But having it built into the protocol like this is just really, I think, a really slick experience for the end users.
Yeah. I think on that tangent, right? With the UTXO module, you can do really, really creative transactions. Just with what the protocol actually allows. So right now it's 4x4 inputs and outputs, but with the different transaction types that we can add onto the network, and even with just the 4x4, there are even crazier transactions that a user can do to really optimize for cost. Like even also, just to give an example of the Curvegrid dashboard, right? How when you do a distribution, what you do is you make 2 outputs reserved for 2 users. So as opposed to making 1 transaction for one recipient, you actually make 1 transaction on behalf or as a recipient for 2 users. So you can, with more transaction types, with more opportunity to test out something like this, there is flexibility available.
And of course, for businesses, the real thing that's been done here is it's solving problems. It's solving real world problems that people want to fix in a particular sort of way. And it shows the synergies that we have available to us with Curvegrid and OMG Network to be able to help solve those problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of improving things through collaboration, how can distribution of the points be made faster?
Perhaps I can just introduce this briefly, and I think Pong, you can fill in the gaps a little bit more. But as you mentioned, Pong, currently we only make use of two of the outputs for each transaction. So a single transaction on the OMG network distributes tokens to 2 addresses at a time. And basically the cap of the UTXO model is a single UTXO can only be referenced once per block, once per child chain interval, if I'm not mistaken. And so the idea is basically that through software that splits up your assets into multiple UTXOs, you can distribute sort of in a parallel manner. So for example, if you have a list of 1,024 people awaiting distribution, rather than performing the distribution in 500 child chain intervals, doing 2 at a time, you can actually just pre-split up all your UTXOs sort of in a binary tree formation and distribute basically to all 1,000 addresses, 1,024 transaction addresses in 1 child chain interval. So that's like 7 intervals rather than 500. What do you think, Pong?
Yeah, I think so I think the type of transaction as you mentioned, that's one way. But really for me, the way that if you take it onto another lower level on the child chain level, we allow users to make transaction, or actually on the JavaScript library level, when you make a transaction and then you make a subsequent transaction, you're waiting for that transaction to get confirmed, right? There is a method called chaining that we could do to really takes its output of the previous transaction, throw it as an input. without waiting for block confirmation. So as you said, Dan, I think it's a matter of like client's preference. So the way we're doing is just maximally like secured method, right? It's like you wait for the transaction to get confirmed first, then you make a subsequent one, as opposed to here you can chain like transaction together so that you can perhaps adding tens or even possibly up to 100 transaction into a block. So it's possible to do on the child chain level, but it's something that we need to be able to provide if the user required on the JavaScript client level. And just to, because like this, Plasma chain is all about security, so I think it's important for me to just describe the security trade-off that you would have to do. And the trade-off for that is you would have to trust the child chain operator for the period in which you make those transactions. So if you're chaining those tens or hundreds of transactions together, you're trusting that the operator is not Byzantine. Of course, like within those periods of seconds, after that, and once the transactions are confirmed, everything is fine. So I think just a matter of understanding trust assumptions and understanding like really weighting outcomes, weighting the value between having truly trustless transactions versus like optimizing for business and optimizing for performance.
And the really cool thing about this as well is that it's not just one of these kind of purely theoretical things. I'm sure members of our community will remember well Plasma Dog. And one of the ways that they implemented their game system was to use this exact transaction chaining. So we know that we have the capability to do this if we need the demand.
I think it's a trade-off, right? You pick like you can't have everything, right? You cannot have everything. And so, am I buying a cup of coffee? Or am I funding like a central banking system, right? And maybe one of those I'm going to use chain transactions, and the other ones I'm going to wait a block, right? And so and that's kind of the trade-off we make, and something that's come out for us, over the last many months of collaborating with OMG is really coming back to what you said, Pong, around the UTXO model, where it's powerful because Ethereum, you basically have to lock the entire state of the blockchain for a given transaction. Like you can't compute transactions in parallel. And if anybody, at home, we can't see you on video, but put your hands up if you've ever tried to run like an Ethereum node before, you'll know that the sync takes a really, really long time. I mean, I think on mainnet these days, if it's a full node, you're talking, you've got to have like a server class, beefy machine with SSDs and tons of RAM and tons of processing power. And it's not even the bandwidth so much. It's that you have to crawl through all of the previous transactions and compute them in parallel. So it's like complete locking of the state of the blockchain for each transaction. So you've got 100 transactions in a block. You've got to go through those in series. Whereas on the OMG network, you can compute all of the UTXOs in parallel. It's kind of like row level locking in a database instead of table level locking. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it gives you that flexibility. Like, again, coming back to, do you want to do chain transactions? And we'll just, we'll go complete parallelization and take a small trade-off, against that the operator for that one block is going to, cause a problem. And, I don't know, it could be, loyalty points or small amounts of money, or whatever, right? Versus, okay, no, do we pre-split the UTXOs, right? Again, could be small amounts of money or big amounts of money. Do we pre-split all of the UTXOs and deal with the parallelization that way? And I think what we're going to see over the coming months is different solutions, or not different solutions, but different uses of the technology from different customers. And we're going to learn more as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of the CPE and the process of it, what was the release process around the product?
Yeah, sure, I can take this. So like many other most modern software houses, we have a very kind of distinct process for releasing software. So for us, the software that we had was, of course, the client side, and that was the browser extension that we had that's now on the Google Store. And then, of course, there's a fee relayer service, and that's the backend service that pays the service pays for the fee on behalf of the end user. So we have a set of logically distinct environments. We have a development environment, and then we have various different stages in which we we test the software in each one of those environments. So in each individual environment, we have different characteristics that we want from that environment. So, for example, I know that the community pointed out that there was a sudden influx of transactions on our integration network, and there were a lot of eagle-eyed people in there that noticed. But there was actually more to it than that. We actually have a stress testing environment specifically for this purpose. So with our production services out there and living on mainnet that's handling real money, software just doesn't go from somebody's laptop straight up to a production environment. It has to be in a controlled, managed way that we actually push this out. And one of the things that we did even before it hit our integration environment, because we don't want to mess up any kind of ongoing integrations that some of our other integrators may have, we performed all of this testing on another private network. Then when we felt that it was safe to do so from that environment, we moved on to the integration environment. And that's where all the transactions that were spotted on the integration environment happened. And we use something called infrastructure as code to define our environment. So what that means is that we have like cookie cutter environments that sets in code. So we know that two environments are identical, with the only difference being that one's on Watson and one's on mainnet. So that gives us the confidence in knowing that the testing that we've done previously, working in one environment, will work on another. So that's a kind of overview of the process that we had for the back end. As for the client side, that was a little bit more tricky. The reason for that is the process to get a extension permitted into Chrome is actually non-trivial in terms of time. So
I want to hear about this. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I'm not kind of hitting on Google here. I mean, the browser is what the average person uses to access a whole range of services. Be it banking services, novel financial services like we're providing, their daily news contents. But the moment that you have an extension in there, it has the capability in order to view things that you're doing with your browser. So, of course, there's a process that Google has in there. So initially, what we had to do is have this as a developer-only extension. So what that meant is that the end user had to go into the browser settings, flip the developer mode, and then be able to use the community points extension that we'd already built. But fortunately, not too long after we'd actually handed this deliverable over and posted it online, our extension was accepted into the Google registry.
You didn't have to like airdrop them some rock to convince them that this is a good thing, that they should expedite the approval?
I even contacted a friend inside of Google to try and expedite it, and yeah, even they couldn't move it on any faster.
That's good though, like, right, that because I mean, we're relying on Google and Mozilla, right, Apple to help us keep our users safe. When you're dealing with what will will someday, right, like real points that people care about, that or money, obviously, like you absolutely want that kind of those extra sorts of checks in there. Was there a lot of back and forth that you guys went through with them? Like, were they asking questions and you had to like revise things or provide legal documentation? Or
yeah, it's not to that level. We definitely had to wait like a decent amount of time. I assume that they have like a processes already involved that are sufficiently automated. Likely, I think it might likely require some human intervention on their side. But from my side, I'm just speculating as of now. But it wasn't back and forth. It's just more like just the wait time, and it's just not really, that wait time is not deterministic, right? It's not like so I can go on. I think we can go on all day, I think Jake and I, about the distribution of like application distribution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so Apple application distribution, for example, right, with Fortnite. So I think it's up to debate whether the kind of like web distribution, which is like permissionless, you just publish any website or any application as you wish, versus an app store sort of model with extension store and an Apple App Store. It's up for debate whether which one is preferred. But from like a developer perspective, the App Store approach definitely takes its toll.
And Can this application be useful outside of Reddit?
I think so. I think one of the things that we were able to demonstrate as part of this deliverable was that we are able to put together a product that is ready for use and solving problems immediately. And that means that, you know, we have a proof of concept fee layer. We may work with future clients in the future, and they're like, okay, thanks for this software that does what we want, but we want to build it in a certain way. So at least what we have here is the building blocks of example to show how an integration can work. And not only do we show how it works, but we can show how it solves particular problems like paying for fees on the behalf of the user. So yep, I welcome any future clients as well that want to come work with us. Feel free to contact us with the contact us page on the OMG Network website.
Yeah, from I think just even like the dashboard, right? The dashboard is running off of like Curvegrid multipass. I think the APIs that you provided, the authentication layer, the key management on the HSM, like those are the application building blocks that could most definitely be reused for all sorts of other applications. Even this up all the way to like the distribution mechanics as well, right? I think one more thing I would like to add on taking this application out and make it useful for other business domain is just the consideration of what kind of business that you are, what kind of problem you're trying to solve, and understanding that the customer and the actual end users, because right now our Reddit is really savvy, just to be fair, right? we're very savvy. Like everyone on Reddit knows how to use MetaMask, how to install public-private keys, seed phrases, and all these activities that for end users that are not blockchain literate will have like really hard time relying on. So I think on the side of like if it's like other business domains, just having consideration of how the whole end-to-end application would work would likely involve like modification or making custom applications within their stack to cater to those sort of different types of users. And that involved like maybe abstracting away things like MetaMask to be inside an application, which is pretty similar to what Reddit is doing right now with their existing community points, right? Everything is sitting inside mobile application. Users never really know they are running the embedded crypto wallets inside their app.
Exactly, it's transparent as it should be.
Right.
In the same way that nobody knows how TCP works, how HTTP works, it all happens for you. It's all these kind of layers of abstraction on top that makes the user experience a lot better.
And it was a crazy month of just building, but to cap off this this whole fireside chat, what was it like working together on this project? Maybe Jeff, you could start.
It was great. I mean, it was, you know, you can see me smiling, right? And here we are. I mean, you know, a little more than a month later, and amidst everything else that's going on, you know, just being kind of a very global team in general, right? Never having met and you know, across different time zones and things like that. Yeah, it was great. It was really great. And I think kind of being like a digitally native teams, it was pretty smooth, right? Like we've got the chat, the communal chat already set up. We've got all the other collaboration tools. You know, we both work to what Jake, you were saying earlier. I think we both have fairly similar kind of software development and productionization and operation kind of philosophies. So, you know, it elevates the entire experience because we don't have to spend time, you know, kind of dealing, you know, talking about the kind of, you know, the details of how are we going to do this, or how are we going to do this? We can focus on the problem at hand and the experience at hand, and you know, you can just see the tremendous amount of work that the OMG Network team put into it, right? Like the documentation, you know, and the videos, right? Walking everybody through it on webinars and sessions like this, the Reddit post and the Medium post itself, just completely comprehensive. And then the actual experience, right? And so it's just a pleasure to work with a team and a project where we feel we're really moving the needle on decentralization and on blockchain and on adoption. Because I would the end goal. I mean, this is just like a signpost on the way to the end goal of everybody being able to open up their smartphone and just interacting with whether it's points or governance or real money on the blockchain. And really kind of reinforced for us that OMG Network is a team that's doing all the right things in this respect. So, big round of applause for the OMG Network team. Not just Pong and Jake, but everybody else who's on this webinar and just around the world. Thank you.
Yeah. Just one last thing on I think really working together. I feel like from the OMG Network side, we're the infrastructure provider, right? There is this myth, I think, in this industry where it's like, oh, if you're an infrastructure provider, you just build the software and then eventually somebody will come and integrate and then deliver to an end user, right? That will magically happen, hopefully at some point in time. But I think we both agree, Jeff, that that's likely not the case. Even as an infrastructure provider, we need to build closer to the application integrator, right? Ensuring that everything's just tighten the feedback loop and making sure that we're solving the problem for all kinds of end users, whether that is the integrators themselves or making life easier for the end users. So just really, I think we are aligned on that, shipping something as complex as a blockchain infrastructure or as a application as a service, like multi-bass, there is elements of collaborations and elements of solving a problem that is missing from this general, I think, just the blockchain industry.
Yeah, I mean, usability is a huge issue still. Doesn't matter if you're a big enterprise and you can afford to go hire like IBM to build you a blockchain, or you're a small or medium-sized business, or even an individual. Usability is a huge issue, and we're so close to it, we forget about that. 24-word seed phrases and chain reorgs and gas, right? I mean, we live and breathe that all day, and it's important to remember that the vast majority of users out there, what doesn't matter whether individuals or organizations or corporations, aren't. And so I think that there's two aspects. The first is that it's that old cliche that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Together, OMG Network, Curvegrid, right? We can, what we produce together is going to be greater than if we were building it on our own, essentially, or just multiplying by 2, right? And part of it is our contacts and context and experience, the second is that we, as technologists, we have to constantly be conscious that we're not building in a vacuum, right? There's all these other things that are going on, all these other interests, and the road of history is littered with technology that was a really great idea, but didn't quite make it. Just for all the reasons you mentioned, Pong, that we kind of lose perspective. And so it's actually collaborations like this that I think for Curvegrid, helps bring us a lot of perspective and bring us a lot of extra, context around what we're doing, and, validating it and helping us adjust and keep things on the right course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that wraps up our fireside chat. The heart of it all is collaboration and making things happen. And for all of our attendees, if you haven't yet, or if you haven't checked out our submission, feel free to scan this QR code, upvote, review, comment, tell us what you think about the CPE. If you haven't tried it yet, and if this is the first time you're hearing about it, do try it out, throw out some rocks. It's going to be a lot of fun. Our community has been enjoying it a lot. And that ends this. We have 20 minutes left on this platform. Feel free to meet and chat with everyone. I see that there are a couple of people who have asked some questions. Just find us on the floor and ask us away, and we'll see you there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Curvegrid.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll be sticking around.
Thank you.